And we are live. Welcome everybody listening and watching the stream. Welcome to everybody who is watching the recording, which will be on LinkedIn. We had to move the stream because we shifted actually from last week to this week, and it wasn't possible to use the same stream link. So today I'm very excited to be here with Paul Eiter from Notch Consulting.
Hi.
Oh.
Hi, Martin. I'm happy to be here.
And we are live. Welcome everybody listening and watching the stream. Welcome to everybody who is watching the recording, which will be on LinkedIn. We had to move the stream because we shifted actually from last week to this week, and it wasn't possible to use the same stream link. So today I'm very excited to be here with Paul Eiter from Notch Consulting.
Hi.
Oh.
Hi, Martin. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about Recovered Carbon Black and anything else.
Excellent, excellent. Because we did a nice collaboration, the report Prospects for Recovered Carbon Black 2022. What is special about this report, Paul?
Well, I think I was very happy to work with you. I think it resulted in a report that is much greater than the sum of its parts, because I think, on the technology side, you're absolutely the expert, and I think on the market side, I hope that Notch is recognized as a, an expert on the carbon black side. And so I think, back and forth and working together, I just think it really resulted in a report that was much more comprehensive than I could have produced alone, and I hope than you also. So I'm really happy and proud of the results, and I'm happy to share it with potential clients here. I think it's a good report. And I think there's a lot of people rushing in to say what they think is going to happen in Recovered Carbon Black, but I feel like the industry really needed a fairly rigorous take, both on the technology side, what's possible, what's out there now, what's possible, and then on the sort of forecast side, to link that into a sort of a very rigorous methodology about what is actually possible down the road, as opposed to pie in the sky forecasts or doom and gloom. I think we took a really good look at the market and tried to do a very rational, reasonable forecast for where this market is going.
Yes. That's what I wanted to say. It's a tried and tested format, right? Because you're publishing the Carbon Black World Carbon Black book since when? I bought it when I was
2002, I think, was the first edition. So it's been, now that you mentioned, it's probably the 20-year anniversary. So it's been 20 years of putting out that report. And I think it's gotten better and better. And I think it's fairly well now accepted as sort of the industry standard for where the carbon black market is. So I hope in the future, this report can be side by side with that one as a pretty much a standard for where the recovered carbon black market is and where it's going in the future, because I think there's a lot of interest in that, and there's a lot of differing views on that. And I hope that this sort of brings a little bit more cohesion to the market.
Yeah. I think I hope also it will become a staple report for the industry and all collateral industries, tire industries. Whom are we targeting, Paul? Maybe from.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that. I mean, I think the big ones right now, obviously, are the tire companies. I wouldn't leave out also, the mechanical rubber goods, sort of the automotive sector, people making rubber goods for the automotive sector, for the industrial sector. That's certainly a sector as well. And then the producers of carbon black have been very interested in this report, and then the RCB producers. And then on the other side, sort of the financial side, the investors, the private equity, people who are interested in getting into the industry, but there's so much hype and maybe a lot. It's hard to know sort of what the reality is. And so I hope that this report goes a long way.
Yeah.
Helping.
I mean, when we Google tire pyrolysis or recovered carbon black, what we get in Google, I don't know whether when you go to page 100 on Google, whether you get a full picture.
Right.
So that's certainly, and I think also it's the first time that I've seen is like a capture of who's operating right now,
right,
and what could be the picture in in a couple of years.
Right.
But sort of, a likely picture, because there's many companies say, okay, we're going to have 10 plants. Some say we're going to have 200 plants or even more, but that is more financial planning and financial sword rattling. I think we put up a realistic picture of those players of whom we think that really built up capacity. And right now, that is where the industry is building capacity and firming up on the specification of recovered carbon black, increasing the quality, and well, essentially responding to what Sander from Michelin and Jake from Bridgestone told us at the conference, in their call to action.
Right, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, which is that, if I could boil this report and all of the research we've done, and I think our conversation is down to a single bullet point, it would be my main takeaway from all the work we've done, and this was a report, was a long time coming, is basically that the quality is there. The question is, and the demand, I believe, is there. And right now we really need to look at consistency and scale up. Those are the two things where I think that it's sort of a, if you build it, they will come kind of situation right now in RCB, which is to say the tire companies want high quality RCB at large volume. The MRG companies want high quality RCB at large volumes. Can the industry scale up to that level and provide those volumes at quality, consistency, and scale? Those are the three. Those are the three absolute essentials. And I think we've already proven we can have number one. Yeah. Number two is coming, and it's number three right now. It's that scale piece. And I think that's where, when I mentioned before, private equity or funding, I think that's really where we are. Whether that comes through a partnership with a tire company, which we've seen, with Michelin investing in Scandinavian Envirosystems, or
Bridgestone Americas
in Delta, that's or Hankook and Anathan, whether we see that kind of direct investment, or whether it's a joint venture, a partnership, or whichever the route to market is, I think that
or like the partnership of Birla Carbon with Circtec, isn't it?
Exactly. Where we're seeing it's not the tire company, but it's the carbon black companies. I do think within the next couple of years, Birla has been at the forefront here. You mentioned them already, and they're clearly at the forefront of the partnership between carbon black and recovered carbon black. I would also mention Continental Carbon's agreement with Boulder Industries, where that's a kind of a more, that's not direct production, but it is certainly being able to offer both of those at whatever mix,
blend ratio,
whatever blend or in whichever grade the customer wants. I think it's a very flexible agreement, so I'm excited about that one. But however, or you look at somebody like Boulder Industries, getting their financing and expanding sort of their plants independently. I think there's just any number of routes to the market. The question is, you look at Pyrum in Europe and their partnership with Black Cycle and Michelin on that side. So I just think there's a lot of routes to market, and I think the next few years will be very exciting. If you look at the list in our report of companies that are planning capacity expansions, it's quite aggressive.
Absolutely.
I think the market will look vastly different in, say, 2 or 3 years in terms of who's out there and what the scale up has looked like and who's been able to sort of jump over that next step, which is to say, not quality, because I think we have the quality that's been proven, but scale. I think scale is going to be the big question for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yes. I think there might be a window of opportunity, though, because right now it's really put on all the capacity possible.
Yes.
When we add up all the reliable players, maybe in 5 years the world is looking a little bit different, and there will be. But now I don't think companies feel much competition. It's
there's certainly room for everyone, I would say. I don't think we're looking at one player is going to dominate. I think at least for the next, you said 5 years, I think that's probably a reasonable time frame. I think we're talking about an area where there will be certainly enough demand out there that anyone who's able to provide the things we talked about, which is to say quality, consistency, and scale are going to find interest from customers. And what's
gonna have?
Go ahead.
We will have an interesting question as well, because we asked for questions we could answer in this live broadcast, and that will play back again to the window of opportunity and what is needed now and what is needed later on. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, well, I was just go ahead with the questions. I think that's
right. Okay, so we didn't get a lot of questions, and I think, of course, it's a nascent industry, so I think companies and people are reluctant to publicly ask those questions. They'd rather like to contact you or me directly, or remain anonymous. And I think the first question, which is anonymous, is, why does recovered carbon black need to be cheaper than furnace carbon black? And I think it gets to reply it, to attempt to reply it, it comes down to what kind of recovered carbon black it is. Is it a very high quality, consistent quality, maybe closer to a 600 grade than to 700? Because 700, that's the table stake. That's the game of current recovered carbon black. The question for me in a go-to-market is how closer it comes to N660, because that is a big volume for the tire industry that goes into inner liner and sidewall. And that is the quality requirement I would like to benchmark with. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be cheaper if it is very high quality and has green, meaning sustainable attributes. And maybe even lower PAH levels. What do you think, Paul, about the pricing? Because you're monitoring pricing of furnace carbon blacks all the time, and you have a good feeling about what prices are going.
I do. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I think that we talked about this a lot at the RCB conference back in Amsterdam, and I think this is a really interesting question, and I think that there is some legitimate question as to whether RCB needs to be discounted to virgin carbon or not. Traditionally, of course, that's been the route to market, because the argument basically was, well, if you're not discounted to conventional carbon black, why would I not just use conventional carbon black, unless you're offering some, even if you can say you are matched to the quality of carbon black, conventional carbon black on these different standards, why wouldn't I just get this from my supplier, whom I already have a large, a large volume supply agreement with? I know that they're consistent. I know that they're reliable, and that has been the route to market, I think, traditionally, and probably will continue into the future. But I think you raised the other issue, what is the value of RCB to the tire customer? And that gets us into the area of sustainability, into the road to going to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, which, as we know, several of the major tire companies have already committed to, as have several of the major carbon black companies.
Wait, is it net zero or is it carbon neutral?
I'm sorry, carbon neutral. Right.
Because there's a big difference.
Right.
I think net zero will be quite difficult, challenging for the furnace process.
I'm sorry,
but carbon neutrality, I think, is possible.
Is possible. But my point being that the value of that piece of sustainability, as we've seen how important this is to tire companies and to MRG companies, and also now increasingly to the carbon black companies, I believe that RCB has an absolutely integral place in any route, any feasible route to carbon neutrality in the carbon black industry has got to include RCB. Now, what I think you would agree with me, if we look down the road, there are any number of technologies that are quite promising, and that I think everyone is looking into. RCB is one of those pieces, and I think it will be an important piece if we look at, alternative feedstocks, including pyrolysis oil, as well as,
because now we have a proliferation of carbon blacks and acronyms, right? We have methane pyrolysis carbon black. We have circular carbon black based on tire pyrolysis oil, still from tire pyrolysis.
Right.
And we have the renewable carbon black, which could be tall oil based, or biomass based.
Right.
And we get some reactions in the chat.
I was just going to say we have both on the bio side. We have both the bio-based feedstock, which could produce a carbon black, or a direct replacement for a direct filler replacement for carbon black based on biomaterials. So there's just a lot of, I think there's going to be a lot of options down the road on that road to sort of carbon neutrality and sustainability. I just think that RCB will be one of those. And this all started as a pricing question. I know we've gotten kind of into the weeds here, but I would say that in terms of the pricing question, I do think that there's a legitimate question to be asked, and I think that suppliers are asking it as to what the value of that RCB is in terms of its in terms of the customers. Sorry, I think I logged out there. I think that it's a very legitimate question for the suppliers to be trying to decouple themselves in terms of pricing from conventional carbon black, because of course the difficulty for an RCB supplier is that they are not bound to the oil industry in the way that conventional carbon black is. Conventional carbon black, obviously the production cost is directly tied to oil and fuel oil, and
which goes up right now, right?
It goes up and down. So for RCB to have to respond to those fluctuations makes it very difficult for them, or harder, because they are not feeling the same impact. It certainly raises questions, but it looks like we have some.
Yes, let me finish that question, because I think pricing is still important, especially for the large volume customers like tire companies. But it is, I see it become less important, because now the green agenda opens a different paradigm. But in order to fill that paradigm, we need to have the performance. We need to be able to replace a high amount of other materials with sustainable materials. If we don't have the in-rubber performance, we cannot use enough of these green additives to make the tire really green. And then only then is the pricing question. So we need the performance first. We get the green attributes because we can put certain addition levels, and then of course is pricing. So we got Babul, and Babul sent a question also on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn page, from Dynamic Pyrolysis in Bangladesh. And so his first question was, do we need any chemical treatment to remove ash or impurities? That's not a key topic on the report. We covered it only lightly. And my personal opinion is that right now the consistency is more important than getting the ash out. I don't think the tire companies require ash leached recovered carbon black. If the recovered carbon black is consistent, they're quite happy with the recovered carbon black as is. Also, those technologies add between $200 to $500 per ton, so the price will bump up again. And then it's a question of what return, what value do you get for that additional cost? And we said there's a window of opportunity, and I think in 5 years, when we actually see recovered carbon black coming into in the waste tires, and we'll recycle those waste tires, then ash leaching might be of interest or even necessary to manage the ash level. Because if we have more than 30% inorganics in the recovered carbon black, we get less and less carbon blacks that can perform as recovered carbon black.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Reinis asked a similar question. Reinis Spunde, actually from Catalico, who is producing activated zinc oxide. How big is the issue of RCB contamination with zinc oxide? I don't think it's a big issue because zinc and zinc oxide is used in tires. Also, the recovered carbon black should contain normally zinc sulfate, not the oxide, because if there's any oxide, it would mean it was overdosed in the tire and it didn't react fully. That's my understanding. However, tire makers are very sensitive to some heavy metals. Some tire makers have mentioned cobalt to be an issue in the recovered carbon black, and the target was specified less than 100 ppm. Unfortunately, the recovered carbon black industry cannot really manage the cobalt level in recovered carbon black, because cobalt is used as a metal rubber bonding agent in the tire production. and only if we mix the feedstock with something that doesn't contain rubber metal, then we can decrease the cobalt. So Reiners, I don't think we have an issue with zinc oxide. Look, Hoppenbrewers in the area here, Benelux, we see quite some initiatives and new plants rising who will use pyrolysis with RCB as a key product coming out. At the end, there's a pretty predictable input of used tires, so doubt how viable, economic, feasible all these startup plants are. Can you share your thoughts on this? What will be the key differentiator to succeed? What do you think, Paul?
Well, I think there's a legitimate issue there. But I just think in terms of circular economy, the number of tires being produced should guarantee that we have a stable supply of. I mean, is that the question? Will there be enough feedstock to support?
It sounds like it's a long question, but I think it's on the feedstock. And of course, when we talk about the window of opportunity in 5 years, maybe there will be competition on the market for a recovered carbon black, but maybe the supply of tires will become short as well. I mean, right now we have, as it seems, a very large volume available, but this volume is not so available. I would say of all the waste tires, the exports and landfill that are still going on, this is the easy accessible volume.
Right.
Any volume that is going to TDF, so it's going to co-processing into cement kilns, that is very difficult to get hold of because the cement industry, they don't want to free that volume. Also, any volume that is processed by big rubber powder processors like Genan or maybe like Michelin with the Lehigh Technology branch, Cargro, PVP, Triptis, or any powder producer, they will not give up their raw material, right? So it might, although the volumes look humongous, in Europe, 3.5 million tons of waste tires per year. In the States, I think it's closer to 4 million tons of tires. But some of that volume is spoken for already. And then, of course, companies, RCB companies, need to secure their supplies long term, like carbon black makers secure the supply of carbon black oil.
Feedstock, exactly. And I think there was an announcement. Boulder has an agreement with Liberty here in the U.S., which guarantees their feedstock.
Collecting 75% of the tires. I think 75% in the U.S. I think
are processed through them, and I think that does sort of just raise the question of what the model of circularity is going to look like in the tire industry. And I think that in previous years where we sold new tires, the old tires were taken off, the tires were disposed of in a landfill, and then we had mountains of tires and we had to come up with some solution to either burn them or use them in fill or use them as fuel. I think that model has passed by the wayside, and it'll be a much tighter loop in terms of taking the tires off the car and then somebody claiming those and recycling them, as opposed to them being disposed of and then purchased and then do you know what I mean? So I think that we need to look at that model in a different way, and I think that those new models will come into use as we go forward. And I think what's interesting here is also something we've talked about, which is it's possible. I can see a future where the recycling of tires is integrated into the tire plant itself, where scrap tires,
industrial waste.
Exactly. There's a lot of waste in tires, and I think that one place that the tire companies are going to be looking at and have been looking at is whether they can. And the nice thing about that is that allows them to absolutely have control over the feedstock. Because that's another thing.
They know what is in
exactly,
which we don't do with the consumer waste,
which is much harder to do when you're talking about post-consumer tires, where it's just a mix of truck, bus, passenger car, all different sizes, all different compositions. If they're doing it on site, it allows them to control the feedstock and also reduce their carbon footprint at the same time, and make use of that waste energy, make use of that waste material. And I think that might be a model where they're recycling it right at the point of production. And then also whether they're closing that loop in terms of the tires that are being taken off vehicles, and whether those ever even truly enter the waste stream in the way that tires previously have. That loop will be closed much tighter. But the reality is that we produce X number of tires a year. Those tires are out there. We will be using them, and
Yes.
we will need to find a
Absolutely.
and find an outlet for that carbon, and the
Yes.
oil and all the raw
Yeah.
materials. So
Yeah.
I was just going to point out one other thing. I found it interesting. One of the projects I talked about in the report was this agreement that Pyrum has with a bicycle maker in Germany.
Ralf Bohle. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Where they have agreed to recycle only their tires and provide them with a recovered product from only those tires. And I think that this is just in the initial stages, and I don't even think they're providing the RCB yet. But I do think going down the line, that's a really interesting model that I think we'll see duplicated in other industries.
Of integration. And mind you, the bicycle tires are much more steel and textiles than rubber. It's a different composition compared with the car tires.
Exactly.
And they do have the tube, because bicycle tires have tubes. Now
Tubes.
the competitive tires go tubeless as well, same as the car tires. But on standard bicycles, we have tubes and the tires. And the tubes, they're pure butyl, and that's a closed loop recycling already. Ralf Bohle is doing, the Schwalbe brand owner. So very nice.
I just find that interesting.
One reflection.
Go ahead. Sorry.
One reflection I had, with the shifts in the tire industry, the car tire industry, of production to low-cost countries and places like Serbia. Every company has sites they want to repurpose. Michelin closed the Dundee site in Scotland. Continental is to close, or has closed, the site in my hometown Aachen in Germany.
Right.
Bridgestone, has closed the Béthune site in France. So these sites, there's an opportunity building recycling facilities to still stay in the tire company ecosystem.
Right.
And that is one way of scaling up quicker. Also, everybody closer to the industry that is already collecting tires. This morning, I spoke with a potential investor that is already doing a reclaim. And so they already procure a rubber powder. Now they can decide whether they do reclaim or whether they do pyrolysis on the tire granulate. That's a synergy. Or another synergy is tire service companies integrating into recycling, like Itochu's acquisition of Murfitts in the UK, who are doing powder, but also developed pyrolysis technology. So when the garage is engaging in tire recycling, that's interesting for me.
It's just interesting to see how quickly reused tires have gone from being this sort of environmental headache to potentially being
black gold.
a resource that people are actually bidding on to take control of. And I think that's this shift in thinking that's occurred over the last certainly 20 years, let alone 10 years, let alone 5 years. I just think that there's been a shift in thinking about what a tire is and what a used tire is. And I just don't think we'll ever go back to those days of having this landfill, like you're saying. That was really the low-hanging fruit. And we're still cleaning out some of those here in the US, unfortunately. But I do think that those days are long gone. And
probably there will be tire diggers as there were gold diggers. We have some more questions in the
we have a lot of questions here. I don't know if we can answer them all, but
Kairul, what is the future of RCB in India? Is any project or any plant working for RCB over here commercially? I think there are hundreds, but the commercialization of recovered carbon black is with a handful of players. So there is recovered carbon black production. I would even say it's one of the countries that has fairly large production of recovered carbon black. Of course, we need to also look at what kind of quality level of recovered carbon black is it. What is the consistency? I think there's a good future in India for recovered carbon black, especially that India is discussing ERP, extended producer EPR, extended producer responsibility, and is stopping the import of waste tires. So that will, I think, spur the use of local waste tires. That's a good development. So Luke commented, indeed, his question was related to available feedstock versus plant capacity to work on it. Right now, we don't have the plant capacity, but I think still, even now, to get the feedstock in the right quantity in the right place, because that's also, sometimes the tires are arising in the big cities, but that is not necessarily where you want to have your location or where your customer is.
Right.
Both for the oil and the recovered carbon black.
You know, for conventional carbon black, I mean, the key factor there for plant location is, where's my feedstock coming from? How's it going to get to my plant?
Looking at the US, 70% of the production is in Louisiana and Texas. But that's not where the tires are made.
Right.
It has to travel.
It's much more important to be close to feedstock than it is to be close to customers. I mean, not that that's not important, but you really need to control that feedstock. And I agree that feedstock control is going to be an issue in the industry, and suppliers are going to need to lock down those volumes for sure.
I mean, trucking is what, $2 a mile? That's not a problem, especially in the US. You have rail transport as well. And that's where the industry. Steve is asking how much work has been done with rubber recycling and using it inside of asphalt as a way to end potholes and improve durability of roads. Somehow, is that plausible? I think there are developments, and there's publishing a lot in the academic world, but also in municipalities that do on-road trials.
Right.
It is I have to admit, it's not my focus, because I feel it's like a grave. We put it in there. And I had people tell me that asphalt can be and is recycled as well. So there will be several loops. But for me, I'm really passionate about putting a tire into a tire. So that's tire to tire recycling is what appeals to me more than to dig a tire into asphalt.
Yeah, I would say, in particular with regards to this report, that we focus entirely on reusing carbon black, recovered carbon black back into comparable applications. We really don't look at the asphalt piece, which is conceivably, which is a significant application, as particularly when at the lower end of the sort of quality and price point. But we really look at premium. We're really focused on what you call RCB, what we both call RCB1, which is to say that really the highest standard RCB that's being used in premium products. That's I think where our attention is.
Yes, absolutely.
In this report, yeah.
So we have a question from Scott at Cal Tire. Please provide a rundown in test parameters for rubber, plastics, and coatings. What are companies looking for? Scott, that's a very good question. In fact, it's a very important question.
Yes.
But this live is not the place to answer all that, because it would cover probably a week of broadcasting. Also, I think, to be fair, that's more like a consulting piece, because that is quite a significant work.
Sure.
The interesting question is, what are companies looking for? And Paul, maybe you remember Sander from Michelin telling us, admitting actually that Michelin wasn't really very sharing what they expect from the recovered carbon black. And I think that's very valid for the whole tire industry, and in fact for even rubber and plastic industries. They don't share publicly what their specifications are to accept raw materials, but they wouldn't do it for furnace carbon black either, or for silica. So that is not the way it goes. It can be established in one-on-one talks with the tire maker, and then it remains confidential. Right? What do you think?
It's one of the areas that makes it difficult. It's certainly one of the major barriers to entry into this market, which is that the standards are not widely known, and in some cases you don't know them until you are, already providing material to the tire company, and they're coming back with this, with their feedback. So that is certainly one of the difficulties of entering this market. There are others, but that's certainly one of them. And I do agree that it does seem sometimes like the tire companies can be understandably very reticent to put those numbers out there.
Yes, please put your sample in the letterbox. Nothing comes out of the door.
Right.
Yes, we have Hari Krishna from Ecolomondo. Hello, Hari. Is there a possibility that pyrolysis, good one, can become obsolete technology and a new technology emerges which is more viable in processing else? Are there any such technologies being developed?
Well, that's always a possibility, certainly, and I think people are working. I think we'll see over the next 5 to 10 years which of these processes are most successful, and I think that's going to be coupled with not just the technology itself, but also scale up and also
I would say process flexibility. What do you think, Paul? Because for me, the success of the furnace process is because it is so flexible to create big and small particles, high structure, low structure, the whole range of ASTM carbon blacks.
And not to mention that it can use various feedstocks, whether it come from crude oil or coal tar or ethylene. There's a
cracker
number of
residue.
That makes it extremely flexible as well.
And that flexibility made that it is now accountable for more than 90% of the world production. And what I would say is the three main recycling routes for tires, which are powder, reclaim or devulcanized materials, and pyrolysis. I would say the most forgiving or the last resort is pyrolysis, because the powder, yes, there's a market, it's commercial, but you can only put so much powder into a tire.
Right.
Reclaim or devulcanized materials. If you have, retread material, you have pure tread. The best process is devulcanization or reclaim, very clear. But the whole tire is of low quality if you do a reclaim on the whole tire. So that is limiting devulcanization or reclaim. But the pyrolysis, is chemical recycling. You can put metal, you can put textile in, and you can separate out the material streams. So it is the most forgiving process, and I would claim that pyrolysis of waste tires is there to stay.
I agree.
The heating method might change. It might change whether it's a discontinuous or a continuous process, but I would say I would see pyrolysis there to scale. I mean, we haven't even started yet, so we don't have to think about.
That's the other thing I think
what can replace.
Exactly, we need to be very clear on in this, and I think this report makes it clear, is that we really are at the very, very beginning. Although we've been talking about recovered carbon black for seriously probably for 5 years as a functional replacement for carbon black. In reality, we are at the very beginning of this industry, and I think it'll be very different in 5 years, let alone 10 years, that what this marketplace looks like. And I do think we're at the beginning of a journey, so we'll see where it goes.
Absolutely. So we got more replies on questions. We got Peter. Hello, Peter. Considering the potential importance of the report for valuable information and investor information supply, how have you been able to make the report independent and realistic to reflect facts over claims? That's a good finger pointing. And Peter, it's not easy. It really is not easy. Even for me, I can say, even clients with whom I work, it's difficult to say for sure when things happen, how big the scale up will be. And we're only starting. And we used Paul's and my professional view on what to include and what not to include. Only time will tell whether it's right or not, isn't it?
Well, I would say two things, and that's a great question, Peter. That's why we talked to Peter. I would say two things. One is that I think we want to make clear that this report will be ongoing. So if there are things that we've left out or things that need to be said, this report we plan to update every year, so we can hopefully continue to hone it and continue to make it better. As I said earlier in this conversation, I've been publishing the data book for 20 years, and I still find ways to make it better. The other piece I would say is that it's actually much harder to publish a report like this, which is available to everyone, and make it to make it fair to everyone, because when you're publishing a report to a single client, there's nobody else to have feedback on that. No one can question your conclusions. No one can question your methodology. Whereas I do feel like us putting this report out there and having it available to everybody is sort of self-correcting, because believe me, when companies feel they've been misrepresented, or when they feel that there's something that's been stated, we will hear it and we will correct it. So I do think that
there are higher standards for the fairness of
exactly. I think that the standard for fairness is much higher on a multi-client report, because it's in some way self-correcting, and that and I've just learned, I hope I've learned from the Carbon Black report that the carbon black suppliers and the tire companies feel that report is neutral and fair to everyone, and I've always striven to have that in my reports, and I hope that comes through in this report as well. It is obviously, it's an issue, but I do think that making the report multi-client means that we are held to a higher standard of
and it should really be the voice of the industry.
Right? That's what we strive for. I really strive to be
not going either way, taking too much back or going too much in, but remaining somewhat objective and neutral in the middle of the industry.
I would say. I would say we are not boosters for the industry. I don't feel like I have let's go recover carbon black, and I really feel like we took a step back. I tried to take I was glitching there. Take a step back and give an objective view from the tire companies, talking to them, talking to MRG companies, talking to carbon black companies, and talking to RCB, and really trying to find a middle ground between all of those conflicting interests, and trying to figure out what really makes sense as a forecast. And as I said, this report will come out every year, so I'm sure there will be things we revise and we rethink or that are changed due to the facts on the ground. But at each given moment, it's just our best view of what the market looks like and what it will look like down the road.
Yeah.
So.
Luke has an interesting question about recovered carbon black in Africa and projects in Africa. I think it could be very interesting in those growing new emerging economies. However, when you look at your carbon black report, there's not much carbon black demand unless we are in South Africa and in the north part of Africa. So I think potential is there in Africa, and I got quite a few contacts that are working on it. But the carbon black demand needs to be, the tire recycling side would need to be where the carbon black demand is also, and the tire production.
Right. I mean, I think if you look at metrics like vehicle utilization, motor vehicle sales, tire production, those all are lagging overall in Africa. And I think until you get RCB is going to be a market that follows those leading indicators. There has, as we said previously, there has to be the feedstock available. And I just think at this point, there's just not that infrastructure in place to support. I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen. It's certainly, as you have said, and I've spoken to them as well, there are companies interested in going into that area, already in there. So it's not impossible. But I do think that looking at where the tire companies are, I think Europe and the United and North America and to a lesser extent South America and Asia will be sort of the.
Coming back to something we highlight in the report, Paul, also is the paradigm change from a economic replacement to a ecologic material.
Right.
And I think it's fair to say that in Asia, ecology is not the primary factor for the growth.
It's still economic, exactly.
Economic, the same in Africa. So in all emerging economies, we see economy as a driver more than ecology.
Exactly.
And ecology really is strong in Europe and in North America, Japan, in the more developed economies.
And this ties back into the pricing discussion we already had, which is the driver economic or is it ecological? And I think once you decouple it from that pricing piece, then you can get more flexibility vis-a-vis the carbon black pricing and be less tied into that sort of thinking that it has to be it's a replacement for carbon black. It has to be tied to carbon black. If we see it as its own sort of product, and I think some of the RCB suppliers have been saying this from the beginning, like we can't see it as a low cost replacement for carbon black. That is not the way to look at recovered carbon black. We're looking at it as its own unique product. And I think the more we can do that, the more we'll decouple its demand and its pricing from.
Absolutely. I think at that point, we have one more question. At that point, we should tell interested buyers of the report how they can get the report. So
Yes.
there's two ways. There's the way, contact Paul, and maybe Paul, you can explain.
Well, you can write to me at my email is info@notchconsulting.com and contact, or through LinkedIn, however you'd like it.
And on my side, you can buy it online on my website, wolfersdorf.com. Now the difficult thing is how you spell Wolfersdorf. You can go in
It's right there.
My LinkedIn profile, and you can explore the report. And if you have any question, contact Paul or myself by email or LinkedIn. And
is there one more question here?
We take one more question from Olaf Eschak at Scandinavian Envirosystems. Please elaborate on the importance of ISCC and REACH and the necessity for the recovered carbon black market. Do you want to start, Paul?
You go ahead and I'll follow on you.
Okay. I think, on the way, so we said we are on scaling up and improving quality, and standards and certifications are super important on that journey. So they really help. But REACH is a necessity. We need to deal with REACH in one way or another. And ISCC is a value add, but they are not all the required certifications we need. So I would see those two as a contribution, and REACH is a table stake. We need to have REACH compliance in Europe.
Right.
There's an interesting development on REACH. There is a small group of recovered carbon black companies, including, I believe, Alpha Carbon and Circtec, that are working or even have placed a draft for REACH registration for recovered carbon black. And I was told by Alpha Carbon that interested parties could either contact Circtec or Alpha Carbon if they want to jump on that train and share the cost for that REACH registration, use that REACH registration. And I think this should be an industry effort, as much as it had been in the, or has been in the furnace carbon black industry, where the Carbon Black Industry Association is governing the license, REACH license of furnace carbon black.
That's why I let you go first.
Okay. ISCC is interesting. ISCC is looking at two things. There's the ISCC EU and the ISCC Plus, and the one is more for certifying recycled material, and the other one is more for biogenic material, which is more of interest to the oil than to the recovered carbon black. So I would say it is important, but we need many more certifications or standards than just these two. And specifically, we need to find a specification between what the producers want to produce and the buyers want to buy.
Right.
And that is the most important norm or standardization that we need.
Right, I agree. Well stated.
Okay. Anything else, Paul?
No, it's
has been fun,
great, and maybe we'll do this again, and we can talk again. I find this really, really a good conversation. And people can contact me, or they can contact you with regard to the report. And as I said, this is an ongoing project, so I hope that we'll continue down the road to learn more about the market and also get a better picture of what the future holds.
Yeah. One last question from me to you, Paul. Events this year? Anything on the radar? Traveling? Where are you going?
I'm not sure if you're going. I'm going to the European Carbon Black Summit in Frankfurt, I believe is in June.
Not going to that.
You are going to, and
no.
Not going. Tire Tech is.
I'm in the other team, I'm in the Smithers team.
Tire Tech, so again, I'm neutral. Carbon Black, Tire Tech is coming. They've moved that one to May, so yes. I'll be going to that. I believe we'll be
meeting there.
You'll be meeting there. And then come fall, I believe that the Asia Carbon Black Conference was postponed because of COVID a couple of times. I believe that it's scheduled. Let's hope the numbers keep going down.
Yeah.
But if it does, it
Probably
should be in Singapore, I believe, in the fall. I believe in late October or early November, but I'm not sure on the exact dates of that. But and then the China Carbon Black Conference was scheduled for April. That was delayed again because of COVID, and they have yet to reschedule that. But hopefully that will be coming either second half of the year or coming up.
Yes.
So
I have ETRA to add to this. Where Jean-Paul Boissé is doing the Pyrolysis Forum. I will present there, which is also in May, just after TIATech. And then, of course, the Recovered Carbon Black Conference. We haven't decided on timing and location. Timing will be September, October, or November. So in the second half of the year. And the location is between Berlin and Barcelona, I think.
Oh, nice. All right, great. Well, I look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Has been fun. Thank you for everybody watching. And please contact us. And we think we have a really great industry report for you. If you have any questions or just want to buy right now, contact us.
Thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone for listening. It's been really great. I will note that we said we talk for 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm looking at the thing. It's been 50. So neither of us are at a shortage for words. But thanks to everyone for listening. It's been great, and I hope we can do this again.
Take care. Stay healthy, everyone. Bye.